If it feels like Trump's investments and financial schemes are overwhelming and confusing, they really aren't. Because he thinks of himself as a king, he just does it all out in the open. Let me walk you through it. So early last year, he was running out of cash because he had to post 2 huge bonds due to $540 million in civil suit penalties. To get access to cash, a bunch of Trump allies got together and formed a shell company called Digital World Acquisition Corp, or DWAC. The company was something called a SPAC, which stands for Special Purpose Acquisition Corp. But don't get lost in the acronyms. It's actually really simple. A SPAC is just like a joint bank account for a bunch of investors to pile their money together. Then they use that money to buy other companies. Now, shady investors used to love SPACs because up until 2024, they were far less regulated than other types of public businesses. This allowed their investors to hide more information about themselves and their intent when acquiring another business. Now, this is perfect when you're not trying to invest money to grow, but instead to influence someone else, which is exactly what this company did, because they waited until they reached a valuation of $1.85 billion, and then they announced a merger with Truth Social. Even though Truth Social has never once turned a profit and continues to pour millions down the drain every month. The company, which is now called Trump Media, in Q1 of this year alone lost $32 million, with revenue of less than $1 million. So the people who invested that $1.85 billion in that shell company, their money was essentially given to Trump to lose. Because investing $2 billion in a company that loses 32 times more money than they make turns out as a terrible investment strategy. It's a great strategy if you're trying to buy favors with the Trump family, which owns 59% of Trump Media, controlling shares worth almost $3 billion. Yet not one single dollar from those original investors had to be traced or registered as a campaign contribution to Donald Trump. In fact, there's actually a good amount of evidence showing that a lot of the original dollars that went into that shell company, which merged with Truth Social, came from foreign investors and maybe even foreign governments. But unless a Trump ally decides to squawk, we'll never know because the SEC investigations were shut down after they paid a fine. Now we get to watch that exact same pattern play out again, where Trump lets people use a sketchy investment vehicle to just give him money as he cooks up and promotes a new meme coin. Now that meme coin, which is called Trump Coin, he launched and promoted right after his inauguration. This meme coin is no different than that SPAC shell company I told you about earlier. He's using it for the exact same purpose. You probably saw he just had a big fundraiser of sorts for his meme coin, where he welcomed the biggest Trump coin investors to come and watch him speak behind the presidential seal at a podium, giving direct access and the ability to influence the president of the United States based on how much you invested. But just like with that original shell company, the Trump coin is not his end objective. Truth Social, Trump Media, and now the Trump coin are nothing more than vehicles allowing millionaires to funnel money to the Trump family, because this is what Trump does. He uses his dad's name, his massive media platform, and his presidential office to make himself more money. And once again, it worked. He raised $148 million in investments in Trump coins, standing behind the presidential seal. And it really couldn't have come at a better time for him, because guess what? The Trump family owns 80% of Trump coins, on top of their 59% ownership in Trump Media, all of which appears to be part of his grand plan to buy one thing he actually does want. Because Trump Media, which is run by a federal employee, just announced that they're going to sell off half of their stock in Trump Media and leverage their remaining assets to buy $2.5 billion in Bitcoin. Catastrophically large investment that would not have been possible if it weren't for these other investors pouring money into the Trump family businesses. Investors who, one day, will come looking for a return.